Show your support for all unions. Don't believe the corporate line. Know that you have specific rights now. It's no longer their rights and not mine. Big business is fighting unions. We all need to stay strong. The people have the power now. Prove to them that
the old gay guy. And today we're going to be talking about people who are anti-union and how they make me cranky. Okay, weather first. It's still wet, damp, and rainy outside. It's warm inside, but it's nasty outside, and it feels like summer's over, and it's really hard to accept. Moving on. Today is Labor Day, the day that we honor people who provide labor to keep the country running. But what we're going to talk about specifically is unions. Now, there have been times when I was against the union when I first started working, because you were required, when I first went into retail, you were required to be part of a union, meaning they were taking a big chunk of money out of your check each pay period. Well, I wasn't happy with that because I saw that we were getting nothing for that. Union representation was weak. Over a 3-year period, we would threaten a strike, or you go on strike, and they come out with this settlement. Well, you're going to get a 50-cent raise per hour. That sounds okay. Because at the time, I think you got paid a minimum wage, which was like $3.75 an hour. It wasn't a lot. And turns out that's not 50 cents an hour. It is 50-cent raise over 3 years. The first year, you'll get 20 cents. The second year, you will get 10 cents. And the third year, you'll get a nickel. Oh boy, doesn't that sound great? No, it was a frickin' ripoff is what it was. There were demands in retail like we wanted set schedules. We wanted paid time off. You want to not be forced to work holidays. You wanted to be able to have a vacation day scheduled, and have them not be able to rescind that at the last minute. These were things that we really wanted the union to do, but instead the union would go to lunch with management 2 or 3 times during the week, and then they would come back and they'd say, oh, we got this great deal, and there was a real struggle, and we fought back and forth, and this is what you get. You get that 50-cent raise over 3 years, and that's it. And for this, we're paying them? That's short-sighted because it was such a weak union, and that was Local 555, United Retail Union, Retail Workers Union, and that still exists because I was at a Fred Meyer, which is a subset of Kroger. Yesterday, I pull in, and they've got picket lines outside, and they're on strike, and it is Local 555. So I can only imagine what they're asking for and what they're not going to get. Now, are unions necessary? In a perfect world, no. In a perfect world, the employer would think of their employees not as a human resource or as human capital, but they would think of them as people, and they would be sharing the wealth. So employees would not only have health benefits, but they would also have a living wage, a job that they would be happy to come to, even if it was a grungy grudge job. Grungy as it's a grudge job. You don't want to be there, but you would be there and you'd be happy there because you're getting a living wage. You can feed your family, you can go to school, you can do whatever is necessary, and you have health care, and you have a set schedule, meaning that you can plan your life around work as opposed to having work dictate your life. Where currently when you work, at least for me, when you worked in retail, that was your life. Your social life and your interpersonal life with other people was totally separate, and it was totally dictated by what your manager wanted you there, when your shifts were. And it sucked. You could never make plans. Even 3 or 4 months down the road, oh, that's too far. You can't make a reservation for a day off you only 2 months out or something like that. And if you had a wedding to go to or a graduation or something, oftentimes you couldn't get that time off and you just had to miss it. And there were many career people at the store I worked at who'd been, let's say, a cashier for 35 years that can't go to their grandkids' high school graduation because they have to work that night and they can't find anyone to fill in their space. Well, it shouldn't be them finding someone to fill in the space. It should be management. And the fact that management always pushes that back off on the employer, oh, well, if you want the time off, you have to find someone to replace you, is bull crap. Because management, guess what? That's your job. If someone wants time off, you should try to get them that time off, okay? Be nice, be gentle. And that's why you have a union, because management doesn't listen to its employees. And that's why unions came about. Now, looking back, I realized that even though Local 555 sucked, if we didn't have it, we would have no paid overtime. I shouldn't say that because I think that's state law that they had to pay overtime. But we would not have health insurance because companies were not required at the time to provide that or even have any way to buy into it. Um, Things could have been a lot worse. Extended hours, forcing you to work overtime, 6, 7 hours more. You might have a 16-hour day. The union says you can't do that. And if you do work overtime, I think it's limited to 3 hours per the contract. But if we didn't have a union, then that would not be the case. And the store would have just abused its employees. I mean, it abuses them anyway. Excuse me. It abused them anyway. I don't want to libel anyone, but in the past, yeah, when I worked there, they would try to get away with everything and they didn't care about you because you were just a resource. You weren't a human being. So that's why unions are important. If it wasn't for unions, there would be no minimum wage. There would be no 8-hour workdays. There would have been no 10-hour workdays. There would have been 12 and 16-hour workdays or whatever hours the employer wanted. And if you said you couldn't work that extended hours, the employer would just fire you and bring in someone who is more desperate, who needs the money and the job. So that's number one, is unions came about in the late 1800s. I think it was introduced in some other state back east, but Oregon, I think, was the first one to sign it into law, the union representation law, where management of a company had to actually work with a union as opposed to just saying, get the hell out. Companies like Starbucks right now, who, when a group tries to unionize, they either get rid of the employees or they close that store. Even though it's a money loss now, they think they're going to gain in the future. And then there are places like Amazon, which I believe is non-union, but I read things about it trying to become union, and then Amazon comes down on the employees trying to organize, which, by the way, is against the law. You can't retaliate against someone for even talking about a union. I do remember that when I was in a union, if there was any mention of a strike, management would come down on you hard, and you would face retribution. Your hours would be cut, especially if you were like thought of as someone who was trying to suggest a strike. It's it's wrong. But without unions, you wouldn't have healthcare benefits. They would have never been imposed and forced upon employer. Employers now have to actually, they have an HR department. They have to actually provide something that the employees can buy into or purchase, so the whole group can be covered. And the more people that are in a group, the cheaper the rates are supposed to be. Are they? I don't know. There's a lot of greed in this world. So you've got that. You've got set hours. There are also, because of unions, there are safety things that have to take place. I believe, at least in most states, there are now occupational safety hazard laws that didn't exist, and they wouldn't exist if it hadn't been for unions insisting upon them, especially in jobs that had a really high injury rate. Let's say the railroad, the timber industry, foundries, all sorts of early things. And unions, I also believe, are the ones that pushed for environmental cleanup, because if you were breathing black tar smoke or something all day long, that's really bad for you. So the unions would step in and say, hey, you can't make them, or you have to clean up this, you have to give them breathers or something so they're not breathing this stuff in. And it's just a safety kind of thing. And those things would not exist in your current workplace if it hadn't been for unions. So I am all about supporting the union. The local 555, I don't know what they're like right now. I know that when I worked in a repair warehouse, there was a Teamsters union that our group wanted to join because it would be better benefits and better working conditions. But the Teamsters wouldn't allow us in because Local 555 wouldn't let us out because they want us to continue paying them their dues. So that was selfishness on them, which made me hate them even more because if they had released us, I mean, there were only like 18 or 20 of us. We could have joined the Teamsters and we would have made more money. We would have had better working conditions. We would have had better hours. It would have just been better all the way around. But because this weaker union and their greed, uh, what is 18 people going? How's that going to affect the 1,000 or so that are in this particular group? It's not. But the people who run that group, the person who's in charge, that chapter of the union, are career politicians or career politician wannabes, and they're all about power, and they don't want to give up that power, even if it's just from 18 people. So on that, I say that part of the union sucks, and I don't like the way that that union in particular operated, or the fact that you were assigned somebody who is making a hell of a lot more money than the people who work in retail, and whining and dining management, and then giving us a crappy outcome. I don't go for that at all, and there needs to be some revisions. There's corruption everywhere, and I believe there's also corruption at the top in some unions, and I would love to see that cleared up. But back to unions in general, support them. I'm not saying don't cross the picket line, but if you cross the picket line, you know you're hurting the people who are picketing. Um, like I said, when I went to Fred Meyer, I was already there. Uh, I did buy one item, I admit it. The store was a lot emptier than usual. They had only a few registers open. I'm guessing these are scab workers. I did see some regulars there, but I believe that since they're in the meat department, that they're a different union because Local 555 is retail. And when I worked at the store, there was the pharmacist union, there was the grocery union, and then there was the retail union. And the retail union is 555, and it got squat as far as pay goes compared to the others. With the Freddies now, since it's all central check and it's all one thing, I thought that all of them that had left 555 and went to the grocers union, but evidently that's not the case. Uh, so support them if you can. I don't know what their demands are. I haven't read anything about this. I didn't even know there was a strike until I showed up. On the way home, I drove by a New Seasons, and they were also striking there. So evidently, they're supported by, or excuse me, they're represented also by Local 555. Again, in the past, an incredibly weak union, one of the weakest unions I'd ever heard about. I don't know if they're better now, but I would hope that since it's been 20 years, they are better and that they have some cojones and stick up for the members and actually force Kroger and whoever owns New Seasons. I don't think it's Kroger. It's some Korean company. I hope that they force them to actually improve working conditions, pay conditions, scheduling conditions, etc. On that, when people say that they're anti-union, I've been there because, again, I didn't care for it at the time. But further investigation makes me understand that a union is important, or you would be treated even worse. So it does make me cranky when someone flippantly is anti-union, or you look at politicians on TV who you know are anti-union and talk about how they're all about employees. Look at the Orange Man right now and how they're really trying to say, you know, we're on the people's side, yet everyone that supports them financially and they themselves would never vote union. They would try to stomp them out completely. Look at Ronald Reagan, how he broke unions like the air traffic controller union. Why? Because they dare say we have need for better conditions. And he's going, F you, We're not going to spend any more money because we're rich and it's all about greed. And that it is. That's about all I have to say on that. If you're a union member, if you support unions, if you're anti-union, rethink your position. All right, that's it, guys. Girls, viewers, everything. Oh, what's that? It's a squirrel. I'm going to let you go, and I will talk to you tomorrow. All right? Take care.
Today is Labor Day, a time to honor those who labor. And today I'd like to say, support a union worker. They're your neighbor. Without unions that are strong, employees would be exploited badly. Employers, they're often greedy and don't see you as the human, sadly. Show your support for all unions. Don't believe the corporate line. Know that you have specific rights now. It's no longer their rights and not mine. Big business is fighting unions. We all need to stay strong. The people have the power now. Prove to them that they're wrong.